Disclaimer before we start the real video, guys. The Louisiana Tech Baylor game has been canceled due to some coronavirus problems. It will be made up at a later time, so you can disregard that pick against the spread. Now, on to the rest of the picks against the spread for week number 2. What's up, guys? College football fans, welcome. Carolina Jackpot's picks against the spread for week number 2, college football. Let's get right into it. Last week, in an abbreviated slate of games, week 1 or week 0, whatever you want to call it, it was actually week 1. Felt like a week 0, though. Jackpot goes 2-2 against the spread, correctly picking Army and Arkansas State, and failing on the SMU and Navy games. Keep in mind, guys, you have to really do research on these games, and Las Vegas lines are going to be changing all throughout the week this year. They just are, because of the situations going on, the way some of these teams have to practice. They may quarantine. You may have a guy all of a sudden who's got to be in quarantine for 14 days, 2 days before a game. And that's the kind of stuff we're going to be faced with this year. I didn't know that Navy hadn't practiced tackling all camp. They haven't practiced tackling at all. They didn't tackle. There was all no contact practices. And had I known that, I probably would not have backed them against BYU. So those are the kind of things you got to look for when you're looking for edges. Getting into it, UAB on the road at Miami. This is the Thursday night game at 8 o'clock. And it's on ACC Network. Miami is laying 14 at home against UAB. Now, UAB did play last week on Thursday night, actually, and they won 45-35 at home against Central Arkansas. Well, last year they went 6-2 in a weak side of the Conference USA. The Conference USA's 2 divisions, their division being the weaker of the 2. They're returning 10 players on offense, including quarterback Tyler Johnson and running back Spencer Brown, who had 100 yards last week against Central Arkansas. They got 9 turning back on defense. And, looking at them last year, it seemed like when they faced some good competition, they really had a hard time scoring. They would give up some points. Miami, of course, we know they're instilling a new offense, a new OC, Rhett Lashley, and quarterback Derek King is a very dynamic player coming over from Houston. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do there. This is probably the best, really good quarterback that they've had in quite some time. I would think probably the best since Brad Kaya was there in the mid part of the last decade. Of course, this is a totally different type player than Kaya was. But you got 4 starters returning along, that offense, which, raises some question marks. But they do bring back tight end Brevin Jordan, who is first team All-ACC and an All-American candidate type player. They have lost their last 2 games to Conference USA competition in Florida International and Louisiana Tech in a bowl game. Finished up 6-7 last year. They looked okay at times and looked terrible at others. And they knocked off Virginia at home, who was a team that made a New Year's Six Bowl in the ACC Championship game. And the week before that, they were behind like 42-0 to a mediocre Virginia Tech team. So they were all over the place. They were not a great cover team at home. We did see them cover, however, last year in their week 0 matchup against Florida. Neither one of those teams played extremely well. And I just think that Miami they've got too many athletes. I just feel like they have too many athletes. A lot of the Las Vegas people, these sharps, are picking the UAB side here. 14 points is not a lot. When you're talking about a dynamic quarterback like King and some of the playmakers that they have on that offensive side of the ball for Miami, and just UAB last week, they won, but really didn't impress me. I mean, 45-35, they were in kind of a back-and-forth game with Central Arkansas. I mean, albeit they were leading for most of that game, but Central Arkansas is an FCS team that, you would think if you're trying to move up to that next level, that UAB would have been able to dispose of them a little bit easier than that. So that's kind of concerning. So really not sure that playing last week and Miami not playing is a huge thing. Crowd-wise, I'm not sure what the crowd will look like at this one. I don't know if I think Miami may be letting the 20% into the Hard Rock Stadium there. I just think that 14 is not enough. I think Miami's got the athletes. I think that they win this game, and I'm going to go with the Hurricanes in this situation here. Take Miami and 14 points. Getting into Saturday's games, we see Charlotte, the 49ers, going on the road to Boone at 12 noon, taking on Appalachian State. Charlotte made a bowl last year, first time in history they did that. And we all know about App State last year, winners of the New Orleans Bowl against UAB, the team we just talked about. And App State won the game last year against Charlotte 56-41. I believe that they failed to cover in that one. I don't have that information right here in front of me. Charlotte is an up-and-coming team under head coach Will Healy. They return quarterback Chris Reynolds and wide receivers Victor Tucker and Cameron Dollar. Now, they do lose Benny LeMay, who was over a 1,000-yard rusher for them, so I need to get him replaced. But they got 7 starters coming back from last year's number 59 defense, which is not an eye-popping number, but for a Conference USA team that's only in, maybe 5th, 6th year of playing, Division I level football, it's not terrible. App State returns 8 starters on offense, including quarterback Zach Wilson and running back Marcus Williams. They did get a big loss there in the kid, wide receiver, last name Sutton, who opted out a couple of weeks ago. That was a big hit for them on that passing game there. Only 4 players back on defense, but they do return Demetrius Taylor up front, 7 sacks last year. That defense was ranked number 26 in the country last year. They did give up some points at times. Charlotte's a team that's ascending here, and if they can find enough of a running game in this one, App State, that's a rowdy environment to play in. And you're looking at Charlotte went on the road last year and covered at App State when the place was full or near capacity. And we're talking about this year, and we've seen some strange things already with underdogs and teams that we tend to look away from. With the up-and-coming team here, with the loss of the Sutton kid at wide receiver, who would have been a big playmaker for App State, I'm going to take Charlotte here in this situation to cover this number against Appalachian State. I don't look to them to win it straight up, obviously. But I think that they have just enough on offense to keep this game close for the majority of the afternoon. Coastal Carolina going on the road, taking on Kansas. This is check my stuff here, see what time this game actually is. I don't see it. I don't have a start time listed. I'm not sure what time this game kicks off, but it is on the road in Lawrence, Kansas. For the second straight year, Coastal Carolina travels out there. Last year, they actually knocked off Kansas at home 12-7. This is a 10 p.m. game, it says. So that's interesting. That may be 10 p.m. Eastern time. It may be an 8 or 9 p.m. start. What is that, Central time? Interesting fact that I heard yesterday. Coastal Carolina had 15 spring practices this year. 15 spring practices. Kansas had 0. So that's interesting when you look at that. Now, Coastal, of course, not instilling a new system, still got the same coach and Jamie Chadwell. A lot of the same players, holdovers from last year. That Kansas offense picked up last year after Brent Dearman took over as the offensive coordinator, and they did not look terrible at times. The 12-7 loss to Coastal obviously was the low point of the season, but they did go on the road and won 48-24 at Boston College the week after the loss to Coastal. They put up some points there in Big 12 play and actually won against Texas Tech straight up. They dropped a 29-24 decision to West Virginia. So you can see a little bit of competitiveness there. Their offensive line is going to be improved as well. Puka Williams, running back, is 2 times all-conference. He dealt with some problems last year in the offseason. Didn't know if he was really going to get to play the entire season. I got all that straightened out and had a really good year, well over 1,000 yards last year. They got 2 decent receivers, and they will be breaking in a new quarterback. Kansas has got some question marks on defense, but, I don't know that Coastal Carolina has, the firepower to really take advantage of that. The line in this thing moved from 3.5, Coastal Kansas giving up 3.5 to Kansas laying 7 this week. So the money's going towards Kansas in this one. There's no way I would have played Coastal Carolina minus 3.5 or Kansas minus 3.5 there. Would possibly play Coastal Carolina minus 7, but I just don't see a veteran coach like Les Miles, and I just do not see them losing 2 years in a row to Coastal Carolina. So there got a lot of people that are leaning on the Coastal Carolina side there. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to take Kansas to win this game by a couple of scores. Like I said, I just think the revenge factor. I think that just better coaching. Just a more mature offense, and I think a little bit more firepower with Williams will get them a win there at home, and I don't think it's going to be that close. Syracuse going on the road, taking on the Tar Heels. Tar Heels, as of this point in time, laying 22 and the hook at home against the Qs. Teams have not played in a couple of years. They had quite the shootout in the Carrier Dome back in 2018. I believe Syracuse won that one in overtime. About that season, they won 10 games. Big thing here for Syracuse. They had 2 running backs, their starter Abdul Adams and his backup Jarvion Howard, both opted out on Monday. So not really sure what happened there with those guys, but they opted out. I don't think these are not future NFL guys by any means, which I'm not taking a shot at them, but that's not the reason they opted out. There's something going on there with that for 2 guys in the same room to opt out. So they're really going to struggle as far as running the football. There's only 4 starters back from defense. That was number 115 last year. Now they did bring in a new offensive coordinator to run a 3-3-5 scheme, though he did come late. There's going to be a tremendous learning curve there. So UNC, I look to not have a lot of trouble putting up points. They won their last 3 last year by 49, 31, and 42. Everybody wants to talk about how close their games were last year, and they were for the majority of the year. But they blew out the competition down the stretch, won the bowl game by 42 against a Temple team that was not bad at all. 31-point win over NC State in their rivalry game, 41-10. And a 49-point win over Mercer, which is really kind of a non-factor. Their quarterback, Sam Howell, 3,600 yards last year. They got 2 1,000-yard rushers and 2 1,000-yard receivers. They almost had 3. So they're loaded there on the offensive side of the ball. The defense, it is a question mark. But, I mean, is Syracuse, I just do not see them really being able to get much of anything going. Their quarterback, Tommy DeVito, looked horrible at times last year. They did go out, and Baylor's got a new offensive coordinator there. And 22.5 points is a lot of points to lay for UNC when you probably haven't been a 22.5-point favorite probably since the 2015 season when they were running through competition there on the way to 11-1 regular season. So initially I would go with Syracuse when we're in an empty stadium situation where there's no fan support. But I just can't. I cannot back the Qs in this situation, knowing that they have 2 running backs to opt out like that. I know they've had some COVID problems there too, and the 2 guys opting out this close to the beginning of the season, to me, points to some kind of internal strife there within that program. That's just what that kind of just makes me think. It could be wrong, but I'm going to go with the Tar Heels here to cover that 22.5. I mean, I think that they can score as many as they would like. And you got to think, too, is Matt Brown going to is he going to keep Sam Howell in there most of the day? Give him hey, I want to get my quarterback some Heisman-type numbers, which is not too far-fetched. When we're talking about Clemson a little bit later, we're talking about Travis Etienne, we're talking about Trevor Lawrence. I think either one of those guys could make a push for the Heisman Trophy. But Clemson is a team. Clemson and Dabo Swinney they're more team oriented, and they're more oriented around winning championships than individual awards. So that's something that I don't get into when I talk about them. But I think we could see Sam Howell stay in this game for a while, and UNC really, really pile some points on a hapless Syracuse squad. Heading on over to the Sun Belt versus the Big 12, Louisiana, Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns at noon. Taking on Iowa State, ranked number 23. The Cyclones and Coach Matt Campbell laying 11 and hook at home against UL Lafayette. They're picked first in that Sun Belt West Division, led by quarterback Levi Lewis. And they ranked number 8 last year in overall offense, just under 500 yards per game, and they returned 7 off that unit. They're going to need to replace some receivers, but they do return a running back in Elijah Mitchell, who has 16 touchdowns on the ground and about 1,150 yards rushing, averaging 38 points per game. Defensively, ranked number 47 in the country last year. Number 21 versus the pass, and they returned 7 starters off that unit. And, Coach Billy Napier is the guy who actually turned down the job at Mississippi State before Mike Leach ended up taking it. When he turned that one down, I don't know, if he's waiting on something better to come up. I really just don't know why he chose not to go after that Mississippi State opportunity. But I can think of a place I'd like to have him at. Anyway, Iowa State, last year they finished up 7-6. They had 3 losses, though, by a combined 4 points to Iowa, Baylor, and Oklahoma. So they're walking in some pretty high cotton there. They really were. Kind of got blown out, got smacked around a little bit in the bowl game against Notre Dame. So they get that behind them. They're going to have to kind of retool that offensive line as well. On defense, though, they returned 9 starters. They were ranked number 72 last year versus the pass. But that's Big 10, the Big 12 numbers. Big 12 numbers. They're facing some prolific passing offenses there. 11.5 points. I just don't think that's quite enough. I think Iowa State is on the verge of being a team that can contend for the Big 12 championship year in, year out. I think Matt Campbell's a really good coach. Napier is another good coach. They're just a battle of two really good young coaches. Will probably end up somewhere else down the road. Well, but with Campbell, could stay at Iowa State for a while. They're really that many jobs that are better. Bigger profile, but he's still playing in a big name conference. I'm going to take the Cyclones here and Matt Campbell and Brock Purdy to cover against the Raging Cajuns. 11.5. I just don't think it's quite enough points at home with a team that is really, that could have conceivably finished the regular season last year 10-2. It was not very far-fetched off. They could have done that. La Tech on the road at Baylor. Coach Baylor got a new coach there, Dave Aranda. New offensive coordinator, Larry Fedora, former UNC coach, former Southern Miss coach. Their senior quarterback, Charlie Brewer, seems like he's been around forever. And plus 7 other starters off that offense. And everybody said, well, they're going to fall apart. They still got a lot of the same players come back. They lost their head coach, Matt Rule, went to the Carolina Panthers. So, that's a huge blow. They got some talent there. His team was 11-3 last year. Went to the Big 12 championship game. 2 losses in the regular season. They were both to Oklahoma. Or one loss in the regular season to Oklahoma, 1 loss in the Big 12 championship game. Then they kind of lost their mojo a little bit, and I think lost 26-14 in the bowl game to the Georgia Bulldogs. Louisiana Tech last year they opened up last year at Texas, another Big 12 team, and they lost by 31. They only got 2 starters returning on defense that last year looked pretty suspect at times, and they looked pretty good at times. They're returning a 1,000-yard rusher there in Justin Henderson. They'll have to replace their quarterback. This is just a situation of I just think Baylor just a little bit more talent there coming back than what people realize. 18, I don't think is quite enough. There should be some fans here. I'm guessing that this one, I have not looked at a chart that showed me how many fans are going to be able to attend each game. But I think the Big 12's letting fans in. I'm going to take them to cover the number here against Louisiana Tech. I just think that La Tech has too much to replace, and they've kind of reached their ceiling last year in the Independence Bowl. They'll probably take a step back. Skip Holtz is a good coach, though. I'll get them back. This could end up being a bowl team again. That will just remain to be seen. UL Monroe on the road at Army. Army, the Black Knights, laying 19 at home. Last week they won 45-0 against Middle Tennessee, team from the Conference USA, ULM, team from the Sun Belt. And they always say, team is never as good as they looked the week before. I really don't know, though. I'm not sure about that. If you watched this game last week, the Corps Cadets were there. They made a ton of noise. This game, actually, it sounded more like a regular college football game than any of them. And I didn't mind watching the games last week. The no crowd factor, it really didn't. I really didn't notice it a lot. But this one really just sounded familiar to me. Last year, Louisiana Monroe, the Warhawks, their rush D finished number 128 in the country. That's not good, especially when you're taking on Army. The passing defense looks to be better this year. Is that going to be a factor against Army? It's not. It's going to be a non-factor. They do return a 1,000-yard rusher themselves in Josh Johnson. So there's a little promise on the offensive side of the football. Now, I think they may be a little bit more effective than Middle Tennessee at moving the thing. Army rushed for 340 yards last week versus Middle Tennessee, and that team was short on experienced D. Louisiana, Monroe has some experience returning back on D, but its defense is horrible. I don't really see that they made a lot of changes there. Army is going to just push the ball, and they're going to cover. I mean, despite last week's blowout, I think this game will be closer than last week's. Just 45 points, that was just a lot to put up. I think they just ambush Middle Tennessee State. I really don't know as yet if that was a testament to how good Army is or how bad Middle Tennessee is. But I'm going to take the Black Knights to cover the spread once again at home against a UL Monroe team that's fit to finish near the bottom of the Sun Belt. Okay, getting into some Power 5 matchups now. Duke on the road at Notre Dame. Duke was 5-7 last year. They did announce Chase Bryce, the Clemson grad transfer, as the starting quarterback Sunday night. They also returned running back Deion Johnson and wide receiver Jalen Campbell and most of their offensive line. The team they were very close last year. A couple of close losses. They could have been 7-5 if things had went their way. They had a close loss to UNC last year, a close loss to Pitt. Can Dave Cutcliffe make something out of Chase Bryce? They call him the quarterback whisperer. We'll see. 15,000 fans will be allowed to attend this game at Notre Dame Stadium. Duke last year, they were just a weird team. Looking at just some of their scores, they won 45-10 on the road at Virginia Tech in Lane Stadium, a tough place to play. I believe that was on a Friday night game. And then towards the end of the season, maybe it was the second from the last game, they lost at home to Syracuse 49-6. Now, none of that really made any sense. They did deal with a few injuries there, but that was just a huge swing in just point production and the whole 9 yards. They lost 38-7 last year to Notre Dame, but this is a Notre Dame team that had Chase Claypool. They had some other weapons there on offense. Duke, they can get after the quarterback. They're going to get after Ian Book. They've got a couple of really good defensive ends there. Victor Demukiji, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm sorry, and Chris Rumpf. 35 sacks last year as a team. So that was a really good number. They may have the most formidable pass rush in the ACC, especially since the kid from Pitt, whose name escapes me right now, decided to opt out. That was one of the better edge rushers in the country. He opted out of the season. So, the Duke stout on defense, especially up front. Notre Dame was 11-2 last year. Of course, losses to UGA and Michigan in blowout fashion on the road there. They do return quarterback Ian Book. Who's he going to throw the ball to? They do not have a ton of experience returning. They do bring in a grad transfer from Northwestern on that side to kind of help with the receiving a little bit. But, that's not... I don't know that Northwestern's been all that prolific at moving the football, so we'll have to see what he brings to the table. And who's going to run the ball? They just don't have. These names you'll end up knowing their names at Notre Dame. This is a team that's they reload. That's what the programs that are elite or cusping on elite end up doing. They can they can have a roster that looks like a plate full of piss in the summer, but everybody's still predicting them to finish in the top 10 and make the playoffs, because there's just a tremendous upside to the young guys that they have. They're going to rely on defense, but until these playmakers emerge, I just don't know that they can crack enough points on that scoreboard to cover this 20 points against Duke. I'm wary of it, and you might look at that and think I'm crazy. Oh, they're going to score 50 points on. I don't think so. I do not. They do make an interesting hire there. Brian Kelly did. Tommy Reese, the quarterback from 2010 to 2013. Y'all remember his name as their OC. So he's a good young coach, and that's an interesting study there. I think the way to go on this one is to play Duke here, to cover this number. Obviously, I think Notre Dame is going to win the ball game, but I think they're going to have trouble, especially in the first half, moving the ball with just so many new weapons all over the field. The only way I could see Duke not being able to cover is, falling behind 17-0, 21-0, something like that, and then with a new quarterback themselves, not being able to come back. Although with Chase Bryce, you'd think a Clemson transfer, that this big environment at Notre Dame is not going to affect him that much. But we'll see. We'll have to see on that one. I'm going out and taking Duke there on that one. Kind of going out on a limb a little bit. UTSA on the road at Texas State. Texas State 8-point favorites at home. I'm not spending a lot of time on this one. UTSA was 4-8 last year. They got a new head coach, so a new system there. Texas State last week, of course, looked pretty decent. Nobody gave them credit. I didn't give them credit for being a very good team, and they hung with SMU. They matched them blow for blow. Ended up losing 31-24. Just kind of succumbed there. SMU, with better quarterback. Shane Buechele, and that, just able to move the ball a little bit more effectively in the second half. But not a bad team. Now they're going after a chance here where they have a legit chance to win the game. They do have a 1,000-yard rusher return themselves in Sincere McCormick. God, a lot of these teams return 1,000-yard rushers. Man, my South Carolina Gamecocks, man, we haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher returning in freaking 10 years. It just seems so long, but some of these teams do. It's nuts. I don't think it's that hard to do. It's hard to do, but you get what I'm saying. You should be able to find somebody that can do that. Texas State found themselves a quarterback in Brady McBride. It's a transfer from Memphis. Calvin Hill, a freshman, ran for 100 yards last week against SMU. Of course, that wasn't, like one of your top shelf defenses, but still, a much more talented defense than what you think a freshman coming in at that program will be able to do. They have something to prove, or are they going to take a step back this week? I think they got something to prove. I think they got, they got a little bit of taste of success, albeit kind of the moral victory style. And I think this week, they've got a team that's legitimately beatable for them, and I think they do so. I think they cover this number. Take the Bobcats to cover at home in San Marcos. Georgia Tech on the road at Florida State. The Seminoles laying 12 and the hook at home in Coach Mike Norvell's debut. Much heralded off-season hire here, probably one of the biggest ones. He's chosen incumbent starter James Blackman to captain that offense. How's he going to do in this new system? They got a talented receiver there, Tamorion Terry, 1,200 yards receiving last year. On the offensive side of the ball, that's probably their best player. Their defense has some talent. They finished number 98 last year, though, in total defense. So, the talent doesn't really match up with the numbers there. Marvin Wilson, defensive tackle, that's a first-round NFL pick. This guy's a monster. They will be without their leading tackler, Hamza Nasruddin. Hurt his knee last year in the last game of the season against Florida, and Norvell said they're just giving him just a little bit more time off to get that thing right. I don't really know how big of an effect that's going to have. Against Georgia Tech, this is not a team that I see going to air the ball out a lot. So they may be able to overcome the loss there of Nozzledine, at least for this game. Georgia Tech was able to win 2 ACC games last year in Coach Jeff Collins' first season at the helm. Their other win, of course, a 6-point win at home against South Florida. They were blown out several times last year, though, including 52-7 loss to their arch rival Georgia in the last game of the season. They settled on a quarterback about halfway through the season last year in James Graham, and he took them the rest of the way. And they do have a 900-yard running back coming back in Jordan Mason. The team, last year they showed some flashes. I think Collins is a good coach, but I think there's just, I don't know. I think there's a little bit of rah-rah stuff and talks a good game. But we just haven't seen a lot of action on the field. They were an ACC game last year. They won against NC State by 2 points at home, who's just a terrible team. As far as ACC play goes last year, they were really down, and they won on the road at Miami, they were just Jekyll and Hyde last year. Looking at some of the matchups, Norvell, I think that this is, I don't think he disappoints. I think this was a really good hire. I think that they had some problems with the team during the offseason there, just maybe some racial issue stuff and, some insensitivity issues. Norvell's got the team back together again, one would think. I just think that this is going to be a big game there in Tallahassee. There's going to be, these fans, however many is going to be there, 15, 20,000, whatever, they're going to be as loud as they possibly can be. They're ready they're ready to start a new era down there in football at Florida State. And a winning era, and usher in one again. I think that they cover this number. I'm going to take Florida State here. I kind of went back and forth on it. I just think this is just too big of a game for them. It's just too big of a spot. I don't think that they disappoint. I don't think Mike Norvell disappoints here in the opener against the Georgia Tech team. Just face it, they're just not that good. And I don't think that they're going to have a lot of success here. Arkansas State, going on the road to Kansas State. Of course, we saw Arkansas State play last week. They lost 37-24 on the road at Memphis and did cover the spread. Their leading running back returns from last year, Marcel Murray, didn't play against Memphis. His leg was injured. He's questionable this week against Kansas State. They split time at quarterbacks between Logan Bonner and Lane Hatcher. Neither one of them have a tremendous amount of success, but Bonner did toss one touchdown pass to go along with 2 interceptions. They gave up 500 yards to Memphis, which is, that's not something that's that surprising. Is it 222 on the ground? The pass yards they gave up are a given. This defense of theirs, though, was number 124 last year overall, and they returned only 3 starters off of that. So, I don't know, is that a good thing or not? Giving up only 37 points to Memphis, at Memphis, Memphis, just not a lot of changes there in scheme. So new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, but still along the same mindset. So they did a good job there. Kansas State, Chris Kleiman, it's his second season there. They went to a bowl last year. He was a coach that won several national championships at North Dakota State. They got a totally new offensive line, and they are they're off offense finished number 103 in the country last year. Only 2 starters are turning off that. Skylar Thompson, the quarterback, and then they got a wide receiver named Malik Knowles. And like I said, totally new offensive line. There's going to be a learning curve there. We haven't been able to do all the things that we normally do to get prepared with totally new players as we have in the past. I got a new defensive coordinator coming in there as well. Arkansas State, are they going to make a big improvement from week 1 to week 2? They say these teams make a huge improvements from week 1 to week 2. I don't really see it. I think they played pretty well last week. A couple of turnovers, though, a little bit concerning for them. This is a big opponent for them in Kansas State. Memphis was a team that had lost their best rusher. Even though that offense really not changing a lot of philosophy there, you would think that this game is going to be huge for them. They're only 10.5-point underdogs. Arkansas State's a good team. I just, for some reason, I think they are the ones who might go out and spring that upset this week. They just might spring that upset. I'm going to take them to cover this number at Kansas State and pray that I'm right on that one. Somebody's going to get upset this week. One of these Power 5 teams I feel like is going to lose to one of these Group of 5 teams. And this is the one that I just think that Kansas State, just, with a second-year head coach, I have a lot of question marks there on offense. And so that's why I'm taking that one as my potential upset pick. But I'm definitely taking the Red Wolves to cover. Clemson, the Tigers, going on the road to Wake Forest. They are laying 33 points on the road. There will be no fans at this game. The last 2 years, they've beaten Wake by an average of 55 points. And that's with Wake having some pretty decent teams. Clemson at receiver, they're going to start Joseph Nagata, Cornell Powell, and Amari Rogers. Names that you may or may not have heard of a couple of those. Justin Ross, of course, the dynamic wide receiver, kid that would have been an NFL draft pick at the end of this season. Obviously, out for an injury. He's gone for the season, so he'll be back next year. Hopefully. Their offense last year ranked number 5 in the country. Their defense ranked number 6. So that's just some huge that's some huge numbers. That's just a lot of balance there, and they still return some talent off that defense as well. The biggest loss there would be Isaiah Simmons. The guy was like a hybrid safety linebacker. I mean, he did it all for them. Of course, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne. We know all about these guys. Those return. Lawrence, well over 3,000 yards passing last year. Etienne, about 1,600 yards rushing. Both legitimate Heisman Trophy candidates, and both of them, showed out last year at home against Wake Forest. That was a game kind of later in the season when Wake had some injuries, but I really don't know that it would have made a whole lot of difference. This year, they're returning only 2 starters on that offense. They had a big opt-out about a month or so ago. Sage Surratt, wide receiver, decided to opt out and not play, get ready for the NFL draft. This was a guy who was well over 1,000 yards receiving last year. Sam Hartman will take over as the starting quarterback. He's had some reps as quarterback and has started a few games, but has largely been kind of a backup up there. This year, the offense is his to run. Christian Beal-Smith and Kenneth Walker will kind of split time there at running back. On the positive thing is they do return 9 players on their defense, including Carlos Basham, who had 10 sacks last year. And they also return their 2 leading tacklers in Ryan Smenda and Jacquez Williams. Those are 2 really good players at the linebacker position there for Wake Forest. I don't really know how much of an impact that's going to make against Clemson. This offense is just so dynamic. And, I mean, they can keep their foot on the gas and probably win by 60 again. I don't know that that's going to happen. You're not going to have a crowd there. This crowd would probably be 60-40 Clemson fans, if not 70-30, if there was a full house there. Even if this Wake Forest defense does ratchet it up a little bit and play a little better than they have the past couple of years, I just have serious concerns about their ability to score. I don't think they'll score more than 10 points. If they do, I would be very surprised. So with that being said, I'm going to take the Tigers to cover this 33.5 number or 33 number there. I think they win like 45-3. Maybe 48-10, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's going to be a snooze fest by the third quarter. Clemson will have the backups in there. UTEP at Texas. We won't spend a lot of time talking about this one. UTEP won last week. It was 24-14 against Stephen F. Austin, an FCS school. Texas returns 7 on offense and 9 on defense. It's all the recipe for a blowout. UTEP, one of the worst programs in FBS over the last decade or so. But they have, you look at Texas, just a little situationally stuff. They've failed to cover 2 of the past 3 years in openers. 2 of those against Maryland were losses. And last year they did cover against Louisiana Tech. UTEP is a team that they've actually found a little bit of a passing game. And an interesting thing about them, I found out, they run 2 plays a minute. Yeah, 2 plays a minute, which is a very, very slow-paced, methodical type offense. Got a lot of ball control there. Even if they don't score, you're looking at your some possession changes there, and then you got your special teams off and on the field, punting a lot. They could kind of muddy a game up a little bit. Despite the fact that I don't think they're going to have much success at all offensively against Texas, they could still eat up enough clock to keep this thing under that 43 number. I mean, we could see Texas up 49-0 in the fourth quarter, and UTEP score a fluky touchdown against the third-string defense and cover that number. I don't know if Texas needs to keep the foot on the gas that long. I kind of don't think they do. They have an off week after this game, if I'm not mistaken, and then they go straight on into to Big 12 play. They got Oklahoma coming up in just a few weeks. I would kind of lean toward the UTEP side. If I were going to play this game, I wouldn't play it at all. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. There's plenty more games that provide much better action than that one, but that's just my play on that game if I chose to do it. And the final one of the docket, Western Kentucky on the road at Louisville. Louisville's laying 11 and the hook at home. They'll be at 15% capacity in Cardinal Stadium here. Last year they won 38-21 in Nashville against a Western Kentucky team that finished up 9-4 with a 6-2 record in Conference USA. Louisville 8-5 last year, 5-3 in the ACC. One of the most improved teams in the country last year. One of the most improved. They had a couple of disappointing outings though. Their game against Clemson, they got blown out. They looked like they were going to be a little bit more competitive than that early. Also, their game against Kentucky, their rivalry game, the Commonwealth Cup, I think they call it. They lost 45-13. Which was, kind of really bad. That game you would have thought would have been a lot closer than that. So there's still some work to be done there. But we're looking at a team with some really dynamic playmakers there in quarterback returning in Mikhail Cunningham. 2,500 yards between the air and on the ground. They got a 15-yard, 100-yard rusher returning in Javon Hawkins, and a 1,300-yard receiver in Tutu Atwell. I mean, went with a lot of weapons there. Just a lot of weaponry with the Cardinals on the offensive side of the football. Their defense ranked number 102 last year, so they're really bad there, number 112. Versus the run, Western Kentucky returns a 1,200-yard rusher in Gage Walker. So maybe you see Gage getting some yardage there on the ground in this game. They're going to have to find a quarterback of their own. They lost that one last year. Looking at this game last year, that was like the second game of the season when Louisville was coming off of a decent showing against Notre Dame. They had just started finding their footing. They had their ups and downs still a little bit, though, last year. But just looking at this one, this is really, to me, just comes off as kind of a short line for a team that just has so much firepower on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think Western Kentucky's a bad football team. I just don't think that they have the Jimmies and the Joes to keep up with a Louisville, a team that's got high expectations this year. They're wanting to make a push. They think they can, finish maybe in that second place. The conference it's not split into Atlantic and Coastal this year, but a team that could maybe possibly finish second behind Clemson. I mean, it's not inconceivable that could happen. So I'm going to take the Cardinals in this situation to cover this number. I just think that 11.5 is not quite enough points for a team that's got so much firepower. Okay, guys, that is it for the week number 2 college football picks against the spread from Carolina Jackpot. Check me out on Sunday. I will do a recap and let you know how I did. And then stay tuned every week for the picks and predictions. I'll give you my best plays on these games. And I'll come out with if I have some really bad picks. I normally do it every year. I'll have on Sunday when I recap them, I'll give you my turd of the week. And then I'll give you one that was like my best pick of the week. Against the number that some other people maybe didn't pick and I was kind of spot on with. So I appreciate you all watching. If you're not subscribed, please sub. We do football videos here all throughout the season. Do a lot of South Carolina Gamecock videos. So if you enjoy seeing someone get really upset when his team loses, make sure that you stay subscribed to me, or like I said, subscribe if you're not already, because we lose a lot, and I get mad a lot. Anyway, but I do try to provide you with some informative content, especially on this forum, something I'm very passionate about. I'll see y'all later. Appreciate it, guys. Peace, and I'm out. Go Gamecocks, as always.